Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Today I'm reacting to Are Cells Conscious? Are Rocks Limitless Consciousness in Advaita Vedanta? But real quick, I want to say thank you to the person that sent me the email with the pictures of the last question I had in Swami Tadatmananda's video about the different statues. And also the latest email that was sent. I appreciate it, but I think it's probably more meaningful if I were to go up there and ask him to sign myself. But I did look up the book though. Um, so anyways, I guess the question would be for that person is, I guess what's the point of having multiple statues or different deities maybe? I'm not sure. Again, I'm still a bit confused and struggling with, what is a deity, the different levels deities maybe if there are, or like avatars, but then you have like perhaps maybe like half avatars or half deities that are avatars that have godlike powers but are not full gods, I guess, or high tier gods. I'm not sure. Then you have avatars, people like reincarnation of people who, well, they're considered to be avatars, but they're not like they don't have god powers, but they're enlightened. So again, I guess the question is it just what's the point of having multiple of them? I don't know if it's like each of them have a particular trait that you want to they excel at and that you want to achieve, or what it may be. I just don't know. So help me understand that. Because obviously, like, you have people who in different religions who worship God or Jesus or, well, I don't know what else, but I mean they worship those things, but it's only like one item. Then you have, at least from the image that I've seen, you see like the many different gods, and they have them all there, and I think they worship them because of the different attributes. Like, I remember Lakhani talking about, if you want to be brave, you worship this particular god, or you want to be successful in finances, you worship this god. Is that the purpose of this multiple ones? I know. Again, merely a question. But anyways, let's go and get started.
Welcome to our ongoing question and answer series. Our first question today is from Shrikant, who lives in Pune, India. He asks, I understand that all living things have an underlying consciousness. These living things are made up of billions of living cells. Do all these cells have their own consciousness? If so, is the consciousness we experience a result of their combined consciousness? Those are great questions.
Okay. How I would answer this, my prior mindset, you could say. I'd say probably no. I'd say non-living things would not have consciousness, but living things do. But now I'd say yes, everything has consciousness. The only thing is whether it can remember or whether it can act upon it. Everything has and is consciousness. So therefore, if it has memory, it will remember. If it doesn't, but it has instincts, it will act upon it. But it will be conscious of the instincts, you could say. Like animals or us. Rocks does have consciousness, but it has no brain, no memory, no action, so it can't do anything, but it is weird to say that it's conscious.
Several philosophical and spiritual traditions say that all living things are endowed with consciousness. If that's true, then trees, plants, and even living cells are sentient, conscious beings, even though they lack the powerful faculties that you and I have. To explore this topic, we begin by asking, how can living things made of cells, water, minerals, and other stuff possibly become conscious? First of all, what is a living thing? Dictionaries say that it's a self-replicating entity that interacts with its environment. For example, an amoeba, a single-celled organism, can reproduce through cell division, and it can interact with its environment by moving towards and consuming organic matter that's nearby. Your body is composed of other kinds of living cells, about 30 trillion of them, including blood cells, muscle cells, skin cells, and so on. All these cells interact and work together symbiotically to support the functions of your body. Your brain is also composed of cells, primarily nerve cells, called neurons. The function and interaction of these neurons enables you to think, to remember, to feel happy or sad, and to perceive sensations collected by your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. Now, consider this. All the cells in your body, including the neurons in your brain, are physical things. Each has a particular shape, size, location, and so on. But what about your thoughts, emotions, and sensations? They have no size, weight, or location because they're not physical things.
I'd say they are, but they're not permanent. I could be wrong, absolutely, but hear me out here. So what a thought is an electrical signal in your brain. When you remember something, a particular pattern lights up in your brain. I think this has been proven in science. I think the way they test it's with an MRI, and when they ask someone to think about something, they can see I believe they can see a pattern being lit up, that lights up in your brain. Now, I haven't seen a direct video of that. I've seen a direct video of people showing their loved ones, and then a particular segment of their brain lights up. So, but obviously, we remember memories. Fuzzy, sometimes, not very clear, but obviously, we have to be able to recall it somehow. So, I would just argue that there is a physical thing to the memory or even emotion. However, it is not like it's not a single physical thing. It's like here's the emotion cell. It's more along the lines a pattern of electronic signals. Why am I making this argument? I have no idea why. Just a little bit of kind. There is something physical there, though. I would say. Again, I could be wrong though, but I don't think so. I'm not a scientist either, so I could be wrong, though.
They're non-physical things, mental things. So, in addition to experiencing physical objects in the world around you, you also experience the non-physical thoughts, emotions, and sensations that arise in your mind. These non-physical mental objects were described by the rishis of ancient India as being sukshma, or subtle. That is, not a perceptible material or substance.
Okay, I see.
For example, your brain weighs about 2.5 pounds, but your thoughts, emotions, and sensations weigh nothing at all.
Okay, I see what it's saying. There's not like a thing that you can grab and says, this is my emotion, this is my thoughts, my particular thoughts and stuff. Electrical signal and all that, it's really there for your emotions and your thoughts and all of that, but it's not one particular thing. It's an electrical signal. Okay, I see.
Similarly, inside a computer are memory chips that weigh less than a gram. But whether those chips are filled with data or if they've been completely erased, they weigh exactly the same. Like your thoughts, emotions, and sensations are not physical things, The same is true for ideas, information, and data. The data stored in a computer's memory chips is retrieved and manipulated by a special chip called a CPU, or Central Processing Unit, the so-called digital brain of an electronic device. There's a CPU inside the device you're using right now to watch this video. When the CPU retrieves a particular data that represents my image or the sound of my voice, it displays the image for you to see, and it plays the sound for you to hear. But the CPU doesn't see me or hear me like you do. It doesn't perceive the orangeness of my robes or sense the inflections of my voice. The CPU has no thoughts, emotions, or perceptions. It only has data, ones and zeros, binary information. You, on the other hand, have a powerful mind in which my image and the sound of my voice are experienced by you right now. When those images and sounds arise in your mind, they become known to you. You become conscious or aware of them because, fundamentally speaking, you are a sentient, conscious being. A conscious being who knows or observes all the activities of your mind. So far, we've discussed 3 different things. First, physical things, like your brain and its neurons. Second, non-physical things, like the thoughts, emotions, and sensations that arise in your mind. And third is you, the conscious being who observes the thoughts, emotions, and sensations in your mind. According to Advaita Vedanta, consciousness is your essential nature, your true self, Atma. That consciousness is formless and limitless, infinitely vast like space. For this reason, it can't be stuck inside your body or exclusively associated with your brain. Like space, consciousness has no specific size or location, nor does it have any boundaries or partitions. And since consciousness is indivisible and all-pervasive, there can only be one consciousness. The ancient rishis discovered that a single, undivided, limitless consciousness is simultaneously present in every living being, becoming manifest or reflected in the minds of those beings. That means the consciousness by which my thoughts, emotions, and sensations are known is the same as your consciousness, and that of every other living being. Our experiences are completely different only because our brains and minds are different, not because consciousness is different. Wow, that's a really heavy discussion. But we need all of that to address Shrikant's questions.
I will say this, that's just explaining that it makes me understand consciousness and the mind a bit more in terms of Advaita Vedanta, because I've always struggled to understand how consciousness, how we don't experience each other's mind, because even though it's been said many times, it's just never really clicked for me that the consciousness is unaffected by experiences. Any kind of experience, it doesn't matter what it is, doesn't affect, it doesn't stick, doesn't go with consciousness at all. This now, and I can understand now, this consciousness is the same through all people. It is just awareness. It's all it really is. You could now for me, I could argue that we all have individual consciousness. Again, I don't know this to be true. This is the issue that I kind of have, is that I have no proof that there is one only consciousness, or there are multiple consciousness that's just all the same. They're all just copycat consciousness, or not copycat, but all the consciousness that we all individually have are the same. There's no difference between them. So this is where my only issue is that I don't know which one is true, whether there's just one pervading all of us, or do we all have an individual consciousness, and it being all the same. And I understand why it's the same, because if you generally dig down to the consciousness itself, it's literally nothing but just pure awareness. It where your memories, your emotions, your sadness, your happiness, your memories of the past, your predictions of the future, that's all tied to the brain, the mind. None of that's consciousness. And when they were talking about that, it starts clicking more and more of all the things that I've heard in the past. I remember asking the questions like, okay, are all these memories and things that we accumulate through life, the subtle things, are they going back into consciousness and going to this big blender and then I'll pop out somewhere someday where you get reincarnated? Although there were some talks about that, like avatars and stuff, but that's kind of throwing a wrench in my understanding of it, because I do need to understand more about that. Because if this is an avatar, but yet we're the same consciousness, what makes this one different? Perhaps being enlightened since birth, that's the reason why. Then okay, I think I can understand that. I would have to think about it more, but it's an explanation that I can work on. But yes, I don't know if that was ever a question for anyone. It was for me, for sure. But so this memories that we have, these emotions that we have, never ever goes back into consciousness. Never is affected by consciousness. Is never affected by it. Consciousness never picks it up, say, let me go find another body, then drop it right off into that body with the consciousness with it. Consciousness is not unique to the individual, at least in terms of the Vedanta. And the memories are never passed down from consciousness whenever it goes to a new body. The memories, emotions, everything stays with the body. It's all the material world accumulation.
He asked, do cells have consciousness? Well, if consciousness is indeed limitless and it pervades the entire universe, then it's present everywhere all the time, including in animals, insects, plants, and cells. For this reason, consciousness is equally present in you and in an amoeba. What makes you so different is the fact that you have a complex, powerful mind, and the amoeba doesn't. The thoughts, emotions, and sensations in your mind are known to you. They're experienced by you. A simple amoeba, on the other hand, has no thoughts, emotions, or sensations to experience, even though consciousness is present in it. And further, if consciousness is all-pervasive, then it's not only present in living things, it's also present in inert, non-living things as well. Consciousness is present in metal, in plastic, and in silicon, the materials from which CPU chips are manufactured. So we can ask, are CPU chips conscious?
Therefore, robots are conscious. And this is I don't remember someone made it. I think someone was in agreement with me about AI and robots, about whether they're conscious or not. Again, going based on the fact that if consciousness pervades everything, therefore, technically speaking, a robot is conscious. If a rock is excuse my French there. If a rock is freaking conscious, then a robot's gonna be even better conscious. Because again, I've always associated humans and robots I mean, it's a pretty easy association. We have memory. We need a power supply. We need. I don't say robots needs rest, but so long as they are charged, their batteries are charged, they can go. They need sustenance, which is just the battery or oil, lubrication, and their parts wear out. The only difference is the fact that our body self-repairs to a certain degree until it stops. Whereas robots just wear out and then needs to be replaced. But again, we have memory. That's our hard drives. We have short-term memory, which is RAM, random access memory. Brain CPU. What else? Webcam, you could say, is the eyes. Speakers, not necessarily the ears, but that's the microphone. The speakers are the mouth. You get the one-to-one translation between a mechanical robot and the human body. There can be an equivalency there, a one-to-one equivalency, and then when you set, and I guess the biggest thing is the AI portion, the intelligence portion of it, which I guess the learning aspect. Once we get that, I think a robot is in every way kind of like a human, because humans, babies, they stuff their mouth with everything. But that's the way to learn. It's terrible, germy, very bad in certain situations, but they learn. They grow as they grow up. We teach them how to act, eat, play, what not to stick in their freaking mouth, because not everything that goes in your mouth is good, especially when you're young. If you stick everything in your mouth. But yes, and the same thing with a robot, where it's a child. It learns what it can and cannot do, how to balance, if it can balance, what to do with certain things, what is capable of doing with certain things, what it's capable of doing with its body. Child, I guess it kind of has a little bit of an instinct built in, but other than that, I think a robot and a child are very similar. Just once it gets the ability to learn, I think that's it. Then it's literally it's now as a matter of a Westerner's perspective whether it's conscious or not. But in terms of people who follow Advaita Vedanta, then it technically is.
Well, even though consciousness is present in a CPU chip, the chip has no mind, no thoughts, emotions, or sensations like we do. A CPU chip is like a human brain in a state of deep coma. The second question Shrikant asked is, if cells have their own consciousness, is the consciousness we experience the result of the combined consciousness of those cells?
Well, that's actually interesting. Let me go back to the computer one, though. That's a very interesting statement he made about it's like a coma person. So we can say that robots may not have emotions, right? Obviously, there's no reason to program it that way, We can program it to have pain receptors are equivalent to it, because obviously a robot would like to preserve itself. It doesn't want to destroy its body. But does it make living or being conscious, does it make its consciousness lesser than a human if it cannot feel pain or emotions? I don't think so. I mean, so long as it has memory, it can remember. I mean, they'll have better memory than ours. But if its memory starts going bad, well, it's the same thing as human beings. Our memories are pretty terrible too. But yeah, again, I can equate it to a 1-to-1 ratio, I believe, from humans to robots. Just once it has the ability to learn, and obviously you give it the memory, then it's essentially the same. There is a person that literally has remembers everything from a certain time period back, but any new memory he cannot develop, and only has a memory of 6 minutes or something like that. And every 6 minutes, it goes. I guess it kind of goes back to a certain point and starts all over, because he can't remember. He cannot retain any information past 6 minutes or something like that. It's really kind of crazy. And I think it's a British person too. I saw it on YouTube. Is it true? I mean, I think so. it it's very plausible to have an issue like that with the brain. Of course, there are a lot of issues that can happen to our brain that probably hasn't happened yet. That may happen in the future that we just don't know about yet, because it's not possible for it to happen now. But whatever crap that we develop in the future could cause our brain to act a certain way that doesn't happen yet. Let's continue.
This idea happens to be one of the many theories devised by researchers in the field of neuroscience. For several decades now, those scientists and philosophers have struggled unsuccessfully to explain how consciousness can emerge from a material substance. In particular, from the combined function of the brain's 100 billion neurons. Even today, they are unable to explain how the brain, a physical object, can produce conscious subjective experience, like the perception of orangeness or the feeling of contentment. Those researchers have failed to bridge the gap between consciousness and matter, between subject and object, between knower and known. According to Advaita Vedanta, it's impossible for consciousness to somehow arise from physical objects like neurons. Consciousness is a reality completely independent of physical, material reality. This perspective is held not only by the ancient rishis, but even by some contemporary Western philosophers, scholars like David Chalmers. Chalmers is well known for coining the expression, the hard problem of consciousness, which implies that it's logically impossible for subjective conscious experience to be produced by physical objects like brain cells. Chalmers embraces a concept called panpsychism, which claims that consciousness is individually present in every atom, molecule, and cell. Yet, proponents of panpsychism are not able to explain how the consciousness of individual brain cells could possibly combine to form human consciousness, as Shrikant suggested. This problem never perplexed the ancient rishis because, for them, cells don't have individual consciousness. If consciousness is one and all-pervasive, then it's simultaneously present in every neuron of your brain. There's nothing to be combined. Here's a related question from Mauro, who lives in Mexico City. He asks, how does Advaita Vedanta explain the different degrees of consciousness among sentient beings, like insects, dogs, chimpanzees, and humans?
My answer to that, I just want to see if I'm right. So I'm glad I was mostly right with the first one. I was afraid I was going to be wrong, but I'll say this one, there is no different levels of consciousness at all. There's different levels of awareness of how aware you are of your consciousness, but other than that, we're all the same consciousness. There's no different levels of consciousness. The only thing that makes you seem like there's different levels of consciousness is the brain, is the self-awareness of the ego, the self-awareness of the ego. The more powerful the brain, the stronger the ego. Meaning you have good memory, you have, I guess memory is really a big one. Perhaps just that, I don't know. But let's see what Swami here has to say.
Well, according to Advaita Vedanta, one indivisible consciousness pervades the universe and is equally present in every insect, dog, chimpanzee, and human. That consciousness itself has no different levels or degrees. So what differentiates various living beings is not consciousness, but rather their different levels of sentiency, levels that are due to differences of their bodies and minds. For example, human beings have much more complex and powerful minds than chimpanzees and dogs have. Even an insect must have some kind of rudimentary mind, capable enough to navigate, to find food, and so on. A metaphor often used in Vedanta compares the manifestation of consciousness in living beings to the reflection of sunlight by various objects. For example, the sun's reflection in a tiny drop of water represents the manifestation of consciousness in an insect, whereas the sun's reflection in a large pond represents a manifestation of consciousness in a human being. The sun, of course, represents the one indivisible consciousness that pervades the universe and becomes manifest or reflected in every living being. If you'd like to submit a question for a future video like this one, please send it to me at the email address shown at the end. Be sure to indicate video question in the subject line.
Okay. Different levels of sentient. So I guess the different levels in essentially our mind. And I guess I was mostly right. Again, it's obviously the brain, which allow if you have memory and able to recall it, and also communication as well will help a lot. Because animals, I don't know if obviously they communicate by scent and noises, of course, but I don't know if it's a very structured language or not, or is it just noises? Like, of course, whimpering and then barking and then harsh barking. You have barking that's just a warning, you have barking that's kind of friendly, you have whimpering which is sad, you have really harsh barking which is very angry. But I don't know if it goes more complex than that. I'm sure there are certain animals that kind of have a complex language system. But again, I guess dolphins, I believe they're considered to be very smart. Again, I kind of watch these videos in random, like, you know, BBC's Earth and whatever other channel that talks about insects or animals. I watch them on occasion and learn about certain things about them. And they do have a certain complex communication, but it's more for survival than really talking to each other. So, anyways, I guess it's just it's about the sentient part. It's about, I think it's mostly the brain, in my opinion. I'm guessing, but yeah, our cells, conscious, our rocks, limited consciousness, and Advaita Vedanta. But again, I can't get over the computer portion of it because I don't know if we're getting to that point or not, where if we're gonna have actual AI. I mean, it's getting to that point. I don't know if I don't think we're at the tipping point yet. We're closing on it. We've always been closing on it. It's just a matter of when. And whether we truly have genuine true AI or whether it's just fake AI, you could say. Like it understands the question and still does a algorithmic search or something like that. Then again, what is intelligence if not essentially that with our memories? You know, going back, it's like, let me go back in my memory real quick. How to do 1 + 1? That is a very tough question. What? Go back to original mathematics and remember what 1 + 1 is. It's 11. Wait. But anyways, if you want to send a question to Swami Tadatmananda, I highly encourage people to go to his YouTube channel or send him a question right here. I did one time. I don't think he ever answered, so I might have to send it to him again. Anyways, that's my reaction to this. If you like my content, please consider subscribing, thumbs up, thumbs down, and below. Thanks for watching.